Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. I feel like we were just talking about Roy Williams retiring. That was quick.
Yeah, it really was pretty recent, wasn't it? I mean, to be fair,
Yeah,
like Bubba Cunningham said they were going to go fast. He wasn't kidding.
look. When Roy Williams retired on Thursday of last week, and Bubba Cunningham, the athletics director at North Carolina, gave a separate press availability over Zoom and announced that they were not hiring any sort of search committee. It was going to be him and the president. You kind of got the sense that they knew who this was going to be. And Hubert Davis ends up getting the job. Hubert Davis has always been attached to the successor of Roy, to be the successor of Roy Williams. We've gotten into weird fantasy scenarios about Brad Stevens or Shaka Smart or, hey, Mark Few, which I've brought up because, hey, he's one of the best coaches available out there. But Lauren, it looks like when you really take a step back and try to assess the coaching pool, there was nobody that was as obvious as Roy Williams was when it was time to move on from the Dean
Well,
Smith, Bill Guthridge era. And that kind of led to maybe some calculus that leads to Hubert Davis.
there's a couple of things at play here, though, in my opinion, right? And one of them is the fact that, I mean, I swear every time I turn around, you have a transfer committing somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like the transfer portal is active right now, and Carolina will probably be in the transfer portal.
Sure.
And they'll need to have a coach in place to do that. They certainly need to be able to, assure the recruits that were coming in, like, hey, we're not going to be shaking much up here. Everything's the same for whatever, so I think that that's part of it too. Like if they had wanted to do this enormous search and like really go out and say, okay, who's the next up and comer, who plays the style we really want, et cetera, et cetera. Like they probably could have taken longer if they really wanted to do that. But I think time was really, really of the essence for like a lot of reasons. And I think it just was something that made some sense to them. I mean, like you said, that seemed like that was kind of the heir apparent. Roy has thought very highly of Hubert for a lot of reasons that make a lot of sense in terms of
Mm.
Hubert's own story. I would imagine he was probably one of the last guys that Roy recruited when he was an assistant. And he's got one of those underdog types of stories that certainly Roy can relate to, at least in terms of basketball itself, right? Like that he didn't have any high major offers. He comes to Carolina,
Yeah.
he makes his career a success in the NBA for a while. So I think that you could really see why Hubert, just as a person and as a coach and as a player, is somebody who really connected with Roy. And by all accounts, seems like Roy vouched for Hubert in the process. And that was probably going to be enough to put him over the top.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I'm not dismissing the transfer portal stuff. There's always somebody entering the portal. You're absolutely right about that. I just think that I think we can all agree that North Carolina, if it's not the best college basketball
Yeah.
program,
Yeah.
in terms of coveted jobs, if it's not the number one, it clearly is in your top three, right? However, you could make the argument that it's also unique because
Yeah.
there's so much that's put in for the Carolina family aspect of it.
Yes.
And if you're going to respect that angle, even though Bubba Cunningham came from the outside and there was always some speculation that he also would come from the outside, maybe it's that Bubba Cunningham has some influence as to what that staff is going to look like. I also think that time has progressed with this particular job, that hiring somebody with no coaching experience isn't as wild as you think it would
No.
be. I mean, Jawan Howard got the job at Michigan. A lot of people are going, that's interesting. They've had success, but they also have a really strong staff around him. Same could be said about Patrick Ewing. So I think I'm not saying the template is there. I'm simply saying that it's not as crazy to think that somebody with no head coaching experience can get an opportunity to do this. Wes Miller might have coaching experience at UNC Greensboro, but it's like a little bit of a different step up. So if you're trying to equate what you did at UNC Greensboro versus what you're trying to do at North Carolina are two completely different things. I'm not saying Wes Miller couldn't do it. I'm simply saying when you start looking at the risk assessment, all right, well, what makes more sense? The guy that everybody likes, the guy that Roy Williams wants, somebody who can connect with players in the way that you feel you have to modernize, while at the same time adhering to all those principles about the Carolina family, somebody who clearly gets it. Well, then, yeah, Hubert Davis does make sense when you look at it from that prism.
Yeah, and I think too, it's something that, and this is all going to sound like I'm thinking it doesn't going to work. Like, of course, I have no idea. None of us have any idea if it's going to work out or not. But I can say this, Like it's the type of hire that you make that lets you have the kind of continuity that you really kind of have to have right now. Like to me, this is a much better scenario than turning the whole staff over and starting over from scratch. I think that especially right now, that just makes a whole lot more sense to keep going the way you're going. It allows you to sort of reassess in a couple years if you need to. I mean, you hope you don't have to because Hubert's pretty young. I mean, he's 50 years old. Like he could stay there as long as he wants to, and hopefully it works out. But if it doesn't, for whatever reason, you can reassess in a couple years. Maybe Wes Miller takes a different job, takes that step up job. Maybe he, you just don't know.
Here's the thing about that. Patience. No, Lauren, I think you have a better handle on this.
You froze.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm back. You know what happened? My kids are playing video games right now.
I get it.
Do right. So where were we? Where were we before we?
I think you were talking about patience. That's the last I heard.
Yes, that's right. We were talking about patience. Ben, you're absolutely right. Lauren, you need to take it over. Who needs me? Actually, this is where you will take over. So I'd like to think I'm going to be optimistic here. I'm going to contend that North Carolina fans will be patient with Hubert Davis because he'll actually endear himself to the fan base. It's not going to be a Matt Doherty situation, as we've come to find out. Didn't really handle the whole transition well. Didn't do the things that Carolina people like. Why are you getting rid of this administrative assistant? But why'd you get rid of all these people on the staff? It's not going to be like that. At least I don't think it's going to be like that. And I think that patience will be given to Hubert Davis. At least I'd like to think that. That's my initial assessment right now. But I know this is a tricky thing. Carolina fans want to keep this thing rolling. Mike Krzyzewski's still at Duke. He doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. They want this to keep going, and it might not be so simple.
I mean, to be fair, at least when it comes to Coach K, like, who knows? Because I think we all assumed Roy was good for at least another couple of years. And, then the other day happened. So, no, but I mean, I think there will be patient with him, right? I do. But at the same time, I think that, and this is, I think, partly why we didn't see a Wes Miller or someone like that, because they're in a very difficult spot. And I think Hubert understands that. He has, better than anybody else, understands the spot that he's in right now. Like he's taking over in a spot where Carolina basketball is just in kind of a weird position. They have talent on the roster still, but there's a certain set of expectations there that goes along with Carolina basketball, obviously. And the whole reason Roy retired in the first place was because he felt like he wasn't getting them to that point, and I think it's worth mentioning too, because I've seen some people say, well, Roy retired because he didn't think he could get it done anymore, but Hubert plays his style. A, I'm sure it won't be exactly the same, just like anybody else. And then B, I think Roy mentioned a ton of in-game stuff too with him that he just felt like he was getting wrong or screwing up or whatever. And that's, that's something that could potentially go differently too. So, there will be an adjustment, you would think, but I think Hubert understands what he's up against at this point. Like, he knows that he's taking over this program in a spot where they just had one of their worst seasons ever, last season, the season before this one, and then obviously an up and down year this year and making the tournament, but the 2 tournaments before that. I think he understands the spot that he's in right now, and I think he's ready for that challenge. And it's the type of spot where I don't think it's for everybody. It's not everybody would want to be in the spots like being Roy Williams' successor and the spot that Carolina basketball is in right now. And there is a need for patience, but I think he also will understand that there's a need for a little bit of urgency too.
That's what I always come back to. There was no slam dunk hire out there. There just wasn't. And
Brad Stevens. I mean, you said there wasn't any.
Don't get Giglio started on that. I mean, did you wanna pay $7 million a year for the next head coach?
Listen, all I'm saying is you said there was no slam dunk hire. So
well, there's always a risk too, because as we've seen, guys that what is Brad Stevens' experience coaching at a top level basketball program? I mean, it's different when you're just worried about the NBA and you have your pick of guys that are coming through. You work with the front office. There's an expectation of the kind of recruits you're supposed to get when you're at Carolina. This is something that Giglio and I talk about a lot, and we saw this play out with Archie Miller at Indiana. Just because you've got success at a lower level doesn't mean it's going to immediately translate to that higher level, especially if you are used to getting a certain type of guy. I
mean,
Brad Stevens would have been the name.
Right. The NBA experience would have probably helped. But yeah, it's not like Archie in that way where you're just going from Dayton straight there. But whatever.
But there's also this too. Money matters, right?
Oh,
and this is where the reality of Brad Stevens in Boston becomes a real sticking point, because he still has a contract. They're still in the middle of a season. What do you think it was going to take to get an active NBA coach to leave in the middle of the year to take a college job?
I'm mostly kidding.
And obviously, well, I know you're kidding, but there's a lot of people out there that are going, what about Brad? So you just have to kind of bring it up in that context. Look, I'm just a little upset. The only thing that I'm mad about when it comes to this coaching hire for Hubert Davis is that why'd it have to be so fast? Like today, I had this. I was going to be focused on this. And then the Panthers trade for Sam Darnold? Like, can I just one thing at a time at this point in time? I couldn't get any wild speculation on FlightAware. I couldn't get any of that stuff. So I need this in my coaching searches.
There was a little bit of that because I did see some reporting about who was getting interviewed. I think Hubert Davis is a guy that and you were reminded of this because he was just on College Game Day on ESPN2 earlier tonight rather, and the dude just I don't know how I'd forgotten it because we just don't hear him talk as much anymore. But the dude has just a great personality. He, by all accounts, the charisma works with recruits too, because I know he was big in Carolina's recruiting as well. He is just a really he's a funny guy. He's just super he's a very likable man, and you forget that because he hadn't been on TV in so long, but it's oh right, he was really good on that show. His laugh that he used to have that high pitched laugh on College Game. It was just so he's a fun guy. And I think that will help some too in terms of making this transition. He's very media ready, as the kids would say. But yeah, no, it was just it was very fast. I'm literally trying to finish up the Hubert Davis story that I'm writing, updating it, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, our sports chat pops off with, and now the Panthers trade for Darnold. I'm are you kidding me? So literally everyone else was doing something else. So I'm I'll get it. It's fine. So that I could write the story, so that I had to include the fact that the Panthers still have Teddy Bridgewater on their football team, which I'm sure that their own release probably didn't. So.
Do we have to do a drive-through hot take again?
How much longer do we have though?
Oh yeah, I was going to say
we're 2 weeks.
I was going to say we're not fully vaccinated until
2 weeks.
Not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday.
Right.
So who knows? Maybe Teddy Bridgewater will have been traded by that point, because I don't think the Panthers are done when it comes to quarterback, but that's a separate conversation altogether. Maybe we should do like a Panthers podcast. I heard those are cool.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should think about something like that. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. Technical difficulties aside, we will see you all later in the week.